All right, everybody, we talk about 5 parts of every business: value creation, marketing, sales, value delivery, finance. That's a sequence. And today we are starting with value creation. We've got an expert here, Bruce, with Eastwood Strategy Advisors, who interviews people's customers to figure out why did they choose them. It's something too often business owners just assume. And if they're wrong, there's a lot on the line. So Bruce, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to ask you to kick it off by what is the win that you enjoy having most with your customers?
So the biggest win I like is when I get the call, some months later saying that we are now doing fewer proposals or chasing fewer prospects, but our business is way up because we win everything we go after, which means they're really focusing on not just where they can win, but where they want to win. And they're happier, not just from the revenue, but the work they're doing.
That's awesome. And that's not only a more profitable business, which pays for itself by having hired you, but that's a more rewarding one as well. It's really nice to be appreciated for the work that you do and have people that really tie into that because they were looking for it.
Absolutely.
The phenomenon you and I have talked about that I just want to tie into here a little bit, which is in a marketing and value creation perspective, when it comes to really settling in and saying, this is where I do business, it's tempting to try and be in a business area where there is no competition, because that's, of course, an ideal situation, but that can often mean that there is a reason there's no competition there. But you help create a phenomenon where for your customers, it's almost as if there is no competition for them because they are the only ones that, as we'll talk about later, get them. And that's a beautiful process. So can you talk a little bit more about how you help people really be the only option for their customers by having such a good connection to what their needs are?
Sure. The traditional marketer would talk about being unique and unique selling propositions and finding some way that you're different, which probably is some way clients don't care about. What I talk about is really being a great choice, which means that they can do it confidently, that they're happy with you. There's no reason to look anywhere else. And what that does is that turns it from a competitive situation into those competitors or alternatives. Yeah, clients could still go do it some different way, but if they're going to do it the way that you are talking about it with them, there's really no other choice. And that happens when the client says, you get me, because that means that you are aligned in what you are trying to accomplish, not about all the steps and the tasks and the expertise, but the ultimate end result. And that's what really connects.
That's powerful. That's really powerful. So what we're going to dive into is a practical 1, 2, 3-step process that somebody can implement in order to interview their own customers. That's something that you do for your customers, but it's something that people should really get started on their own and at least see, you know what, this is why I'm hiring somebody like Bruce to help me do this. So let's jump in. First question, who should they be interviewing? All of their customers or a specific subset of them?
So I talk about interviewing your best customers. That's what I focus on. And best customers are, I define them as the ones you would clone if you could clone some customers. It's not everyone. It's unlike an ideal customer that might be hypothetical, might not actually exist. You've never served them. A best customer is someone that, 1, exists, and 2, you've done a great job with.
That's awesome because
I get more best customers. Yeah,
exactly. And I see too often that people have this grass is greener mentality of, oh, I'd love to do this kind of work, or I'd love to be in this kind of market. But what you focus on and you recommend that these people focus on as they go through this process is the real customers, the one with whom they have actual track records and stories and with whom you can really pull that data of, okay, well, why did you choose this person? And let's jump to the second item. When you have this conversation, should it be, this is how great I am, essentially reselling, upselling them, or should it be about somebody else?
Oh, they hate those conversations about, it's the veiled sales call kind of thing, the survey. One of the reasons I'm able to have, the long conversations I have with very senior people, my clients, is because it's about them. And so instead of the usual conversation about how they fit into my client's business, they've had lots of those. They don't like those. That's a waste of their time. There's always a conversation about how does my client fit into their business. People love that conversation because it's, once again, it's aligned with how do you improve their business. That says, we get you. And they will be very revealing in those cases and answer questions they've never thought about before.
That's important. And just to be absolutely clear there, from a value delivery perspective, we're also looking about like capacity and, okay, how do these people sort of fit in the slots that you create in order to be consistent and effective? But when you really flip the script and you understand, okay, they are making a buying decision of looking at, okay, how does this person really help me? That's what helps them really figure out, okay, who gets me and who's going to be the perfect fit. They understand that they're an advisor to me with problems X, Y, and Z, and they recognize that I'm very busy at these times, but instead I put times to work on my business at these periods, and that's when I'm most excited to work with them. And they know that they can be available right away. All these different tidbits and items that when expressed, and I assume that this is a real component of the successful outcome of this process, either done alone or with you, is that somebody can add these pieces to their sales process. And when they share them, the other party just nods and says, that's exactly what I'm looking for, is somebody to fit into this specific need within my business that just gets it and in turn will get me. Am I right?
Yeah, and that's why sometimes there's people that need to work with you before they work with me, because I'm not about helping them deliver on their promise. I'm helping them make sure that they are selling or marketing what it is they are going to deliver, what the client really wants. And for that, they have to have a very smooth running operation.
I appreciate that. And that's one of the beautiful synergies between our work. Let's talk about confirmation bias, because this is something that can really derail the process. Can you not only define confirmation bias for us and give people some advice as to how to prevent it from corrupting the process?
Sure. Confirmation bias, for those that aren't aware, is confirming your own kind of biases about how things are, what you see. It's the classic, you see what you want to see or what you're expecting to see. And that can be very, very dangerous when you're talking to your clients about your business. That's pretty personal. And even I fight that when I'm working with clients. And so one of the things I do, and I certainly recommend anyone else interviewing their clients to really, really work on this, is to gather information, but don't try to draw conclusions until you're well into the process. Because if you have that first conversation and you say, I get it, now you will see that in all the other conversations, whether it's there or not. And so it really takes a tremendous amount of discipline to say, I'm not going to try to draw any connections until there's enough dots to try to connect them correctly. That's easier for an outsider, but it's not impossible for someone who is able to step outside themselves. So that's part of thinking like your client, as opposed to what should the client be thinking about? What do they actually think about? That's what's important.
That's so helpful. And I could totally see somebody going into this process, talking to their best customers, and then coming out of it saying, I knew all that. That's not news to me. And that, quite frankly, points to them having done the process wrong instead of the process not being the right thing for them to do.
But that's more frequent than it's infrequent.
I believe it. I believe it. So, Bruce, there's something that you have called the Client Whisperer Assessment, which it sounds like is a great starting point for people to sit down, go through this process with you, see if it makes sense to get your help. It's a touch point, a diagnostic of their business. And then even if it doesn't make sense, you'll help them point in the right direction and even make some suggestions as to how they can go through this process on their own. Can you walk me through what that assessment looks like? And I'll drop the link in the description for people to find it. But let's talk about how people do that.
Sure, it's a pretty focused, about 40-minute conversation, so it's not committing your life, but it talks about really multiple sections. So it starts with really business and what is the business? What is your business? It's not why you're in your business, but what is your vision for the business? It's about how do you create value? How do you get paid? Is it paid indirectly or directly for what the value you create? The next step is about why do people actually choose you? How do you improve their business? And then the last section is what you would expect from someone, marketing guy, is about what do you think is working? What do you think isn't working? And why not? And what I do is ask a couple of questions in each of those sections. And then I do a little, based on what I've heard and my decades of experience, a little bit of analysis of what I'm reading into the situation. And sometimes it's people, that's enough for them to say, now I get it. Now I know what I need to do, in which case, God bless them. I've done good work for the world. And in other cases, and we had one of these recently, where they clearly needed your help before I could help them. And so that surfaces that. And then where I can help people, in terms of digging underneath the covers and helping them figure out what those real answers are, why people really choose them, then it's a great setup for that. And we're off to the races. They've got a sense as to how I work. I've got a sense as to how clear they are about their own business, and then from there it's just all well, I won't say fun and games, but it's a fun process because there's so much learning, and because it's centered around best clients, it's always good news. It might be news and a surprise, but it's not people hate you. It's people love you because for reasons that you didn't think about.
That's something I'm so glad that you emphasized, because I think people often are afraid to go into this process because they'll get bad news or they'll lose clients. But in what world do you lose clients from trying to figure out why people love you so you can give them more of that? And in what situations does somebody that already loves you, that's a big fan, a really happy client, that they don't have insights for you that help you get other people like them? So I strongly encourage people to go through this 1, 2, 3-step process, which I'll elaborate in the write-up of this video. I highly recommend that people have this assessment conversation with you, Bruce. And Bruce, thank you so much, not only for being here today, sharing your wisdom, doing what you do in general, but for having those conversations with people, because asking the right questions, that's half the battle. And that's one that I'm really excited for you to help more and more people do, so that they get more of their best customers and they figure out exactly why people come to them, because that allows them to do the work that they love. So Bruce, thank you so much.
I can't help them improve their business unless I have that conversation. So I love these conversations anytime with you. This is always fun, and I love my work.
That's an honor. All right, Bruce, great things ahead. Thank you again for your time, and I look forward to people finding you. Take care.
Thank you. Goodbye.